Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Ubisoft Forward. I would like to congratulate all Ubisoft teams around the world for their tremendous work bringing these incredible games to life.
We were once a pioneer in gaming and destructed the landscape forever. But now we have lost billions of dollars, and now I'm shifting that blame, onto you, the developers. I need you to focus and work harder than ever before. The ball is in your court. These are some of the individuals we can blame.
Altair, Ezio, Arnaud, Bayek, Cassandra, Evor, many of you
will be on the chopping block for the next few months as we look to cancel games and shut down studios. And I need you now, team, to be working harder all while
learning, challenging yourself, and most importantly, having fun. With your support,
I can finally sleep well at night knowing that this is not my fault and that I could just blame it on you guys the next time or merge with Microsoft.
And now, let's see what's next for this fantastic universe.
Yo, welcome to the channel. It's your boy Skater V. On today's video, I'm going to be talking about the downfall of Ubisoft. Well, this is a lengthy video, so I'm going to have timestamps down below as we talk about the last 8 years of the games that Ubisoft has been releasing and how they've been approaching their business and treating their employees. So with that, let's get to the video. Ubisoft was once seen as a highly praised and coveted studio, producing some of the biggest titles in gaming history. But along the years, they somehow have lost track and even oversaturated the formula to the point that all their games began to feel and play the same, and fans even began to notice a difference. In 2018, in an earnings call, it was revealed that the studio was potentially going to lose up to 10% annually due to some of their titles failing in the years prior. But they could avoid this due to the rich history that they had. Yet they decided to double down on the amount of titles that they were releasing and focusing on different avenues of monetization. So how is it that a company that was once estimated at over $6 billion fall to just shy of 3 in under 5 years? Now, many will blame the company's CEO, Year Gearman, for some of their mishaps, but he would like you to revert that to the developers. Now, the entire Ubisoft team was shocked when they received the email in the beginning of the year stating that the company was going to face some turmoil and that they were shifting the blame onto the developers. The CEO even stated that the ball was in their court, so they threw it right back at him and now they're going on strike. Now, we'll talk about this later in the video, but it's just a mystery on how Ubisoft was once a titan in the gaming industry, really creating some genre-defining titles and changing the gaming landscape for better or for worse, just fall from grace due to the lack of self-confidence in their own creativity, to the point that the company is now reevaluating themselves to figure out what defines a Ubisoft game. Now, there has to be some point in the timeline where we could have seen this, right? Well, I will argue yes, and that the company has known of these faults and mishaps for many years and decided to double down. So let's dive in and see how did we get here. In 2015, we got Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and while it had a rough launch to say the least, most fans liked the gameplay, just didn't care for the story. Now, the main criticism was that it did not look or play like a next-gen game, like this was their first push to the PS4, and not that the entire Assassin's Creed series started on the PS3. Now, actually, Ubisoft was trying to be a little bit creative on this one. With Rainbow Six Siege, they made this entire different type of genre game where you had like this cops and hostage type thing. Now, it had a rough launch, but luckily this was the Phoenix Rising for the company because it actually has grown to be a respectable franchise since then. And in 2016, they released their first attempt at a looter shooter with Tom Clancy's The Division. Now, while it was compared to Destiny just in a third-person shooter, it was still pretty well received because those fans really go crazy for these games. Now, it's not my cup of tea. I've tried them. I really can't stand like 5 minutes just shooting at something and nothing goes down, like only 2% of their life bar, but I can see the appeal for it. Oh, and Ubisoft, just because there's Americans with guns in your game doesn't mean you have to call it a Tom Clancy title. Like, stop using that man's name in vain. Then later that year, we got a sequel to Watch Dogs 2, which they decided to change the overall tone and aesthetic compared to the first game, which was very dark and grimy for no reason. They decided to go for a little bit more trendy approach to the writing and this whole landscape of San Francisco, but I liked it. It wasn't that bad. Now, 2017, Ubisoft went all out. Now, if you notice, the 2 years prior, they were only releasing maybe 2 games of a year. They were testing the waters with the next gen. And Ubisoft looked like they were feeling a little bit more comfortable to getting back to their yearly schedule annual releases. So they doubled down on mobile games and sequels to some of their most popular titles. Now, Ubisoft doesn't only make Assassin's Creed games. They do Monopoly and other type stuff, but really to no success or prevail. With this one, they were trying their own attempt at the Skylander Disney Infinity model of the toys the game with Starlink, and really the reception was very poor for the game itself. And with that, no one was buying any of the toys because no one cared for the game. Now, I don't know what audience that Ubisoft was going for because it wasn't too kid-friendly to appeal to the young audience, and there was no way an adult was just going to start buying these little toy figures when they could have definitely just gotten some Gundams. From this point, I was pretty much convinced that if you did not have an established IP with these toy games, you were just not going to sell. And then Skull and Bones was revealed as this new DLC pack for Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I mean, an original IP that did not die and then come back and should release relatively soon. Then Mario partnered up with the rabbits from Rayman for some reason. Now, it was this XCOM strategy puzzle game, which I played it. I thought it was actually pretty good, but you would have thought they would have come up with a platformer so they're both the best in their own genre, but this could have been a good partnership with Nintendo. So they took the criticism of the last Assassin's Creed game very serious. They were like, all right, you think every single one's the same? We're giving it a soft reboot now. And it's RPG and it's a hack and slasher. Based on reviews I saw, the fans actually liked the differences that they added, but the game was just different. It wasn't an evolution of the series. And I don't know whose sick and twisted idea was it to release 2 Just Dance games in a year. What is this, FIFA for you guys? Then they really pushed it in 2018 with Assassin's Creed Odyssey because they went full off with the DLC, everything. It was just basically a totally new game just with the Assassin's Creed coat and name on it. But a lot of fans really liked this stuff, but it got real bad criticism for how grimy it was, and it was feeling like a looter shooter with its whole armor mechanics. Now, while they like to show off their big major franchises, Ubisoft does have a lot of great indie games, and Valiant Heart was such an amazing ride. I definitely recommend playing or giving it a watch. Now in 2019, Ubisoft decided to focus less on the games and more on the live service market because they came up with their own program with Uplay. Now for $15 a month, you got to play all their games and all the new ones that were releasing as well. Now there was speculation that the next gen of consoles were going to release, so Ubisoft decided to play it safe and expand development. But most of the titles that came out that year were just met with mediocre praise and low player counts, so really Ubisoft did not have a bright future ahead of them. In 2020, there was a global pandemic and many of the world's leaders recommended staying in home and asking workforces to slow down or stop production to protect their workers. And this kind of forced some of the world to just be at pause for a few weeks to months. Honestly, by the summer, we're back at it and we're working harder than ever before. Now, there were a bunch of new rules in place and many people were working at home because they couldn't fill up the offices to protect others. Now, I'm not going to act like things were back to normal because a lot of people did lose their job and many just couldn't work due to the circumstances. But Ubisoft seemed pretty confident in their lineup and they were going to release 4 games in a span of a month in Q3. Watch Dogs Legion made the bold attempt of having their NPCs be the lead. And while fans did like the gameplay and evolution of the mechanics, the story was lackluster and didn't really focus on any main protagonist or plot. It just looked like the series was facing identity crisis with every entry. But maybe the Legion name is just a subtitle and it's not canon. Now, one series I can never understand the lore is Assassin's Creed, and with their next title, Valhalla, no, they just went and completely changed the series. This switch for its core mechanics for power-ups and elemental powers just don't really make any sense for this type of series that try to ground itself in a little bit more reality and a light fantasy element. Oh, and the whole historical element is just gone. Now we're just picking different timelines. Oh, and don't get me started on how much this was a grimy mess. The main campaign spanned over 50 hours and they sold you XP boosters so you could speed up through it. And then the DLC was just crazy because I basically played God of War Ragnarok before it even came out. Now finally we got a new IP, and even though Monster Energy Drink sued us for the title, Immortal Phoenix Rising was finally released. Now the common complaint that every Ubisoft game played the same. Now with this one they decided to change it up and just copy Breath of the Wild. Now I'm doing a disservice to this game because I have been wanting to play for a while and I have read in reviews that it does stand out of its own not to meet that comparison. Now remember, Ubisoft was in bed with Stadia and they were pushing all their titles to be purchased on the cloud. Now finally the last of the three Kings released with Far Cry 6, and while we got a lot of good reviews, what was holding it back from getting anything higher was the comparison and gameplay mechanics from the previous one. It didn't really look any different, play any different. It was basically the same thing from Far Cry 5 and 6. And honestly, this is probably one series that should drop the numbers because I don't even think any of the stories connect, am I right? And then we got a sequel to Steep with Riders Republic, and I've actually been wanting to play this game because that was kind of a fun action sports title, and it seems they went a little bit more outdoorsy into the desert. Now while I had a rough launch with its servers, the review wise it was met as a good sports game. And by the end of the year, they decided to enter the crypto market with Quartz. Yeah, they were adding NFTs to their game, and they started with Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which already had a low player count, but you were able to buy limited edition masks and stuff like this, which were super basic. Now you would expect with how games are right now with the free-to-play model and microtransaction and crypto that a lot of people would have bought this. No, apparently only 13 to 15 players actually bought in. Now the 2022 lineup was super dry because they already released all their major franchises the year before. So it was basically just heading to pre-production for everything, and now they were just releasing side content that they had. Rainbow Six released this online horde mode that while it worked pretty well, fans weren't really asking for it, and it basically played like Call of Duty Ghost extension, which was basically the same thing. And then the big holiday title for the year was Mario and Rabbids 2? Yeah. Now, it's not that it was a bad game, it's just I don't think anyone was expecting a sequel to this title, let alone that they didn't approach a platformer like I said before. It was odd that they didn't release any of their major titles that year, and while that would have been normal for any other developer, it kind of showcased a flaw in Ubisoft's structure of their annual releases. And to make matters worse, Google Stadia was shutting down, so they had to refund all their customers and still have to give them a free game, which was a service that they were promoting for the last 3 years. Between all this, the company was facing allegations of 3 senior heads mistreating and even harassing some employees, and the only thing they had them do was just step down. And even when you separate the art from the artist, you can see that there's been a decline in the quality of Ubisoft titles. That even when they copy the same formula, it's not like they're getting a higher score or evolving, because if you look at the earlier Assassin's Creed titles, they still hold up to today. Like with Far Cry, 3 sequels and a bunch of DLC, and it's still lower than the third title with a 91. Apparently the game that came out 20 years ago was better.
Hello everyone.
And now we're in the present, and the company's in tremendous turmoil, as they sent an email out to all their employees telling them off and just saying that they needed to focus and really evaluate how they approach their games, because if they didn't, they were going to face some terrible cuts and layoffs in the next couple of years. And they were even told them that the ball was in their court. And none of the devs were taking this. Now, this didn't stop them from cutting. They ended up canceling up to 7 games apparently in the last 2 years. And they have a bunch of titles that they're still promoting, and we still don't know the result of them. Like Beyond Good and Evil has been up for more than almost like 12 years. And then Skull and Bones just has not come out. And while the world is slowly getting back to normal, workers are still facing issues that they've always had, and employers are just not tackling them. Like, we constantly hear stories of long hours and crunch and little pay in the game industry and other sectors that it makes little sense that how are these big publishers always promoting about how much money they've made in microtransactions, free to play, and battle passes and all that stuff. And then when it comes to the finances, they're always cutting and trimming down every year, yet the CEOs of these companies don't face any repercussions. Now, all hope isn't lost, because at least the workers are fighting back, because the devs end up writing a letter to the CEO asking not just for apology, but a bunch of demands as well. From asking a 10% increase in their pay to implementing these new 4-day work weeks. and for corporate to be more transparent with their employers and just be a little bit more on top of the creative process of their games. Like, these companies like to throw these quotes of magic next to their names, that Bungie magic, that BioWare magic, that Ubisoft magic. But in the end, it's just showcasing that these CEOs are just delusional when it comes to their numbers and finances, that they're expecting high return in game with every title and year, that it's just not becoming realistic. Like, how are these quote unquote businesses don't know how to operate in their finances? They're always cutting costs, they're always trimming down, yet every year it's a shock to them, like, oh wow, we didn't know what we did, we fumbled the bag. It's like, nah. I just feel that the CEOs and the heads of these companies should take as much of the fault, if not suffer some of the same consequences that employers and workers have to deal with all the time, of that fear of losing your job. The sad reality of these corporations is that when they have a CEO that happens to be the founder and they have such a strong hold on the company, there's basically no way to fail other than maybe filing for bankruptcy. Like, basically, Ubisoft is going to ride this all the way till they can see if maybe some corporation can buy them, and then they'll be set. Like, my man's year is probably going to leave with a fat bag and a seat on Sun Table. And I know it's sad to talk about the downfall of this company, but like, as gamers, we should hold these companies a little bit more accountable, because the developers, the ones that are making these games, they're gamers just like us, not these CEOs. And even leadership has shown that they do not reflect their audience or the market. So at some point, these dinosaurs are going to have to leave because they don't even know what they're hunting for. Well, that's the end of the video. I really appreciate that you watched, saw the whole timeline part. I hope I was able to make sense. I was basically just trying to explain that, you know, throughout the years, I know that we love these games and titles, but Ubisoft has kind of been producing some, you know, lackluster games, I'd say, not like they used to. And I think that's a reflection of what's happening to the company right now. And I really hope that the devs are able to settle this and they're able to, you know, get past this and really produce some great games, because Ubisoft used to be a big titan in the game industry and they are capable of making some great stuff. And as of now, I saw that they pushed back the day of the strike, so it may be a week or two before we see anything fall of this, so I might make a follow-up of this video, but I really hope everything ends up pretty well for the devs and for the team itself. So let's hope for a great year for Ubisoft, and I'll kick it back to you, Yuri.
And now, let's see what's next for this fantastic universe.
Yo, thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please check out the channel and subscribe if you want to see more. Till then, it's been your boy Skater V, and I'll catch you to the next one. Peace!